Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse, author of this little book right here. These are the ones where you can find these and my merchandise down in that description. So go down, check it out, fiddle about, use the fingers. Because they can be fun. And as always, thank you guys so much for being such an amazing supporting family here, for being just really awesome, really open, having fun with me, enjoying whatever band is your favorite band. I hope you're enjoying it. You guys, it really, really, truly does mean the world to me that we have this community here. We have this family, that you guys are not just supportful of me, but of each other. That's so awesome. I love that that's what we cultivate here, and just I'm so thankful for everybody and all the opportunities I've had because of this channel. Really truly means the world to me. Thank you guys so much. And today we're going to start out with something, well, we're going to talk about something that, I know the person in this band was very thankful for everything, but when you're up against a Shire-dwelling mouth jockey, as I call him, someone with lead singer syndrome, you're always going, and especially when you're considered a hired gun to them in some ways, life can be a bit of a roller coaster. So today we're going to talk about that. And today, because things are going to get a little spicy, we are sticking with Uinta because, like I said, they have gone back to some interesting flavors. And this is a chili limon, however you say it. I suck at it. I suck very well, but not saying limon, however you say it. Anyway, this is a lager with natural flavors and salt. So very, very summery kind of flavor. We're going to go check that out. We're going to drink that today. So, all right. Okay. Sorry, I got a little discombobulated there for a second. It's kind of coming back to Salt Lake even after one day away I have to readjust because Salt Lake is so not my forever home. But it's long story. We'll get into it one day. But all right, everybody, grab your chilies, your lagers, whatever you have in your hands, and kick up your feet. And let's have a little cocktails and rocktails, a little recent saltums. All right, everybody. Cheers, big ears. Okay, right when you drink it, you can really smell the salt on it, and like the flavors, the kind of chili, and the lemon. It's not quite balanced. It's a little too much lime. Good spice on the chili. I would prefer a little more salt rather than the lime. But actually a very good flavor. You guys, like I said, I know you guys can get Uinta nationwide. So if you see this, definitely pick it up. Give it a try because it is a great summer beer. It's got a really good flavor. Like, it just smells like you're at a summer cookout. You know what I mean? And I think they captured that flavor really well. And I actually even kind of like it better with a second drink. So, there we go. That's, like I said, Uinta's coming back to life. It was just kind of steadfast, boring, typical suburban neighborhood for a while. And now we're talking like Sugar Hood, the avenues. Very good. Golf clap, Uinta. Okay. So, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit today about someone recently having a little bit of a lead singer syndrome. But it's mixed with something else, which, there's a famous line in the movie, I'm a famous, I hate that movie. So there was the manager going, you think Mick Jagger's going to be doing this when he was 50? Dude, he was doing me at 50. Anyway, so true. But, was he 50s or 60s? Oh, he was close. So anyway, still the best mouth. But the mouth we're talking about today belongs to a little Shire-dwelling mouth jockey, as I called him, because I've tussled legally with this lead singer and won. And we're talking about Roger Daltrey and the firing of Zach Starkey, the drummer that's been longest drummer they've ever had in the Who. 20 years Zach has been around. And so many of those years, I kind of saw the dynamic from afar, kind of watching it from the groupie's point of view up in the crow's nest. And it was all over. So sorry. Come back to Salt Lake and my allergies just go fucking insane. Dirty air here. But so this was over a gig at Royal Albert Hall. And Zach was also filming it live. He was streaming his drums live. Roger had wanted him to pull back on certain things and play without certain tracks and stuff. And so Zach was. And Zach is a very talented, very powerful drummer. I mean, he's not crazy wild as Keith Moon, but he gives Keith Moon a run for the money. That's why he's been in this band so long. Because he did work so well with John. Like, he and John could play very much like Keith Moon and John played. They played very well off each other. They knew each other's signals, or John kind of watched each other where John was going to go, because John really did dictate a lot of the Who sound. A lot of people don't realize that, but John, he did. But we're not talking about John. Because in the middle of the show, or there was something, I think it was in the middle of the show, I wasn't watching it, Roger was singing, and he turned around and just started ripping Zach a new one. Just started going off, "You're fucking playing like shit," blah, 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 screaming and yelling, having a fit on stage. Like I said, Roger's not only got lead singer syndrome, he has Napoleon syndrome. He's a short guy. We're about the same height. I'm 5'6.5". I might be an inch taller than him, although I'm shrinking. I'm only 5'6" now. Anywho, we all shrink as we get older, don't we? I can still wear heels and not be taller than most of my lovers. Well, there's only most of them. But anyway, and Roger's also aging. Like, he's going deaf. And makes sense. He doesn't wear a whole lot of earplugs. Of course, he wears the monitors, for the earbuds for the monitors and stuff. But he's going deaf, a little bit of blind, and he's 80 years old. There's been talk about his memory being not as good as it used to be, which that's sad. Is it more old timers? Probably. Probably a little bit. And Roger's really kind of a self-centered guy when it comes down to it. He is very much, even when he married his wife Heather, which they have probably the longest rock and roll marriage in the history of rock and roll. Him and Sharon and Ozzy, right? So he told her, he's like, "Well, I'll marry you because because you want kids, and I want to be a family like that, and I'm cool and I love you, but just know when I'm out on the road, I'm living my road life. I'm living it." I mean, at least he was honest, but he is very much like into his own opinions of his ego, of himself, that come from his ego. So he apparently just screamed and yelled at Zach, and in the middle of the stage, in the middle of the show, which that just doesn't. We've seen Axl Rose do that. We all know about Axl Rose, right? We all know he's a little bit crazy. So ended up after the show, there was a fight backstage. People were fired. So Zach was fired from the Who. Absolutely fired. And Zach went on social media and just sort of played it off. He was just like making fun of it. He's like, "I'm officially free of the Who." Posted a picture on social media of him with this little red old school suitcase from like the 60s, just standing there with the suitcase in front of him. Zach had an amazing, and for those of you who don't know who Zach Starkey is, his dad's from a little band called the Beatles. His dad is Ringo Starr. So, and his first drum kit was given to him by Keith Moon. And now he's taken over in a band that he's been in longer than Keith actually was. So it's really come full circle. So Zach's response to it was really fucking funny. I have total respect that Zach was just, playing with it, because I think Zach knew there's been tension between Zach and Roger since I can remember. Even 2002 when John died, Roger was shooting his mouth off and Zach's like, "Hey man, mellow." Roger was the only one shooting his mouth off about it. So, they have this fight. Roger gets all pissed off. There's all these posts on the Who fans, all the Who pages, legit or not legit, that, oh my God, they fired Zach, and everybody's got an opinion. But what it comes down to is really, I don't know if Roger was hearing what he thought he was hearing, because when you get to a point where your hearing is failing, your mental health, memory health is not exactly as good as it used to be. You're 80 years old, you're having eye problems, you don't perceive or hear things the way that they really are. So I think that's really what happened. Rogers just didn't hear, or he's not used to the loud playing that Zach had to do to drop, because, they didn't have the keyboards or whatever else to kind of fill the gap. So Zach was playing full on, full chest, loud, large, live, right? And I don't think Roger was really prepared for what that was going to do in a full arena. It's different when you're doing sound check in a small arena like Royal Albert Hall, and then when people start to fill up that's why they're still doing check 1 2 check 1 2 when the arena starts to fill up, because it becomes slightly different sound. And I think Roger, that was his first time really hearing that full of a sound since Keith and John were still together. I think that was the first time he really, really heard that in ages and decades. So it freaked Roger out. It pissed him off that his ego got the best of him, because I'm the lead singer and you're not going to fucking outshine me. Fuck you, Roger. You're the only one in the band I've had to sue, motherfucker. You need to take that mouth and stop using it for the wrong things and go put it back on your wife. You know what I mean? Go put it to good use on her. And not in a bad way. I mean, like in a good way, where she's not going to give you a tap, 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 or, give her a little kiss and a cuddle. But I think Roger he just blew his mouth out of control. He just got so mad. Like, he's just getting crankier the older he gets. He puts on such a facade. He's like, oh, I never did drugs. Yeah, is that why you were looking for Vicodin 2 weeks after your fucking root canal, like I said before? Really, Roger? Who needs Vicodin 2 weeks after? 2 weeks. Not 2 hours. Not even 2 days. 2 weeks after a root canal. Then you best be getting back to the dentist, because you got a shit dentist, right? So, but, Zach really handled it very well. He kind of just made a joke out of it. He was just like, well, guess I'm going to retire now and go live my life as, as I want to. He's 50s, my age, 60s, probably late 50s, early 60s. So, yeah, and then steps in Pete, which Pete hasn't always been a peacemaker. I think after John died and as he gets older, I think he kind of stepped into that role a little more, because there was just not the dynamic, because, I think Roger and Pete always had to play around John a lot. And when John walked into a room, that man was larger than life. He could stand on the back of the stage, not moving, just playing his bass, just lost in that moment, just kind of going with the flow like he always did, and still outshine every single one of those guys, whether they're doing the windmill, flipping their thingy, pass it out at the drum kits. John will still outshine every single one of those guys when he walks into the room. And after he died, there became a very different dynamic between Roger and Pete. And Pete kind of had to become the rational one, as where John, believe it or not, was sometimes the most rational one, or Zach was, when it came to band issues. So in Starts to Step, Pete is more as the balance, the peacemaker of the band. And then kind of got things calmed down, kind of got things. And I think it's hard for Pete, because he's watching his lead singer that he's been with for 50, 60 years. 65. God, how long has the Who been around? He's 80. So at least 60 years. 60 years of the fucking Who. 60 years. I mean, they didn't fucking fire Keith Moon. I think they did once, but brought him back. I mean, he passed out at the fucking concert in the middle of Detroit or something. He blew up what do you call it, his drum kit on live TV and made everybody in the band lose half their hearing, when they still kept Keith. But so Pete steps in, he becomes the peacemaker as he does these days. Kind of soothe things over, talks to Zach, because you would think like Zach is like their own son to them. He is their son's age. They were good friends with his father, you know? So this this is definitely coming from a spoiled lead singer Napoleon syndrome kind of type of guy that's going to scream at the drummer in the middle of a fucking show at the Royal Albert Hall. So Zach's back in the band. Long story short, Zach's back in the band. Pete releases a really awesome statement. Roger just stays quiet and goes on a solo tour, which I'm going to say it. I'm just going to say it. Roger sucks these days. He cannot hit those notes. He can't remember a lot of and he knows it. So why is he pushing himself? Because at that age, you cannot push yourself like you did in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or even the early 2000s. You cannot push yourself like that, especially when you are having hearing issues or, because he's going to become frustrated and subconsciously take it out on other people. So, and then Zach celebrated. He's back in the band. Will the band ever play together again? I don't know. Honestly, I think the Royal Albert Hall gig was the last gig for the Who as we've known them throughout our lifetime. I didn't know a Who with Keith Moon because I was too young to witness that, to see that, to register that. I know the band when Kenny Jones had come along, I guess. I don't think Kenny was in there that long. But I met John in 1989, 2 weeks before my 19th birthday. I was 18, he was 44. We're going to have an episode on May, December rock and roll romances because I think that needs to be talked about. Not in the way that, how me and my friends were as teenagers, but as we got older, because somebody just talked about Billie Eilish and the guy she's dating. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in another episode. So, yeah, but Zach's back in the band. He's back in the Who. All is right with the rock and roll world, Trees have started blooming again. Fairies have started dancing. And Shire-dwelling mouth jockeys are back on the road. So, all is well. But it just kind of, when I heard about that, because it is so rare, like if someone turns around and screams at one of the other band members or a roadie during the show, something's up. That's not a pretty thing. There is some serious fucking tension going on within that band. That band's about to break up. That band's about to call it quits. And I think that's where we are with the Who. I mean, I think Pete might get him to go play a few more gigs, but I think Roger's going to do his solo tour and just be like, no, this is not for me anymore, Go back to his trout farm if he still has his trout farm and just sort of live his life with his wife and his grandkids and great grandkids, I guess. So, but yeah, like I said, when you see that lead singer or someone in the band screaming at someone else in the band, you can pretty much start counting down to the days till they announce that they're no more, they're breaking up, they're never going to tour again, they're retiring. But, it's kind of hard. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, the movie, All the Famous, that I hate so bad. When that manager said, do you think Mick Jagger's going to be doing this into his 50s? Dude, he's doing it into his 80s. He's having kids in his fucking 70s and 80s. For fuck's sake, naturally, and not the, the way some people in this world have their 14, 15, 16, 17 kids by IVF. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I just think that, Roger, that incident honestly really was a kind of nail in the coffin. A lot of people think the Who should have stopped after Keith Moon, but they kept going. Kenny Jones joined the band, and maybe he wasn't the best fit, but he was what they... Whoops. Sorry about that. Me talking with my hands, knocking everything over. Okay, sorry about that. I'm knocking everything over with my hands. My microphone all of a sudden didn't work, so we're back in business. Just in time to kind of wrap it up, because, like I said, I don't think, a lot of people think The Who should have quit after Keith died. A lot of people especially think they should have quit after John passed, which they really couldn't because insurance wise and what it would have cost the band into hundreds and thousands, if not a million or so dollars, to pay all the penalties to cancel the tour, to still pay, the road crew, stuff like that. I mean, they kept going because it was necessary in a lot of ways. And then they kind of found this bond that Roger and Pete had because there was no one else standing between them. There was no one else that they had to keep up with as musicians, as soloists, like they did John and Keith. So, and I think that they did a pretty good run. They made another album, Old Red Wine was a tribute to John, mentions me. But yeah, I just think the Royal Albert Hall show will probably be the last we see of The Who. Not because, Roger's an angry little Shire dweller, but because it's run its course. I don't think Roger can really handle being on stage anymore like Pete and, whoever, Pino Palladino is not their bass player anymore. I don't even know who's on bass, some younger guy. But that will never ever like even measure half of what John will be. And I think a lot of the problem with Zach's sound came from that bass player because he doesn't turn up like John did. Like Roger would always tell John to turn down, turn down, turn down, right? Roger and Pete. And he'd be like, all right. And then he'd turn down and then he'd turn around, sneak back over and turn it right back fucking up. And I think that really was part of the issue. I don't think it was all Zach. I think it's because they have this hired gun on bass that does exactly as Roger and Pete say, which doesn't do the Who's music any favors or John's part of that in a live Who show. So I think that that's another issue that I don't think it really was Zach, but who is Roger going to blame? The guy that's been sitting behind him for a lot longer than the new hired gun that's, kissing his ass to the stage right if you're on the stage, right? So, yeah, if you look at it, stage left. But, yeah, I think that this is probably the last we're going to see of The Who. I don't know if they have another... I think they're supposed to be going on tour this year. They might squeeze it out. They might just choose to buy it out, depending on Roger. Because like I said, when you have seeing problems, you're on stage, there's a lot of issues with that. Can he pass the tour insurance anymore? Because you have to pass the tour insurance, physicals and stuff. John did. And I guess Roger could, but I don't know. I think with Roger's hearing and sight problems and possible mental deterioration with age, just that normal, I think this is the last we're going to see of The Who. So whether Zach was brought back to The Who is absolutely irrelevant, but I think they did it because I think Pete really didn't want his, Who family to be broken apart. That he knew that what's going on with Roger, so Pete came in and amended things, and I'm sure Bill Kerbishley and other management and stuff like that had things to do with it as well. So there could be financial issues with contracts and stuff like that. And maybe that's why Zach approached it very cheekily, is because he knew financially and contractually he had the legal leg to stand on, and Roger and the Who wouldn't. So there's a lot of factors, but tell me what you guys think. Would you go see The Who now as compared to even 20 years ago after John died, or would you rather just see the original Who or the 80s Who? Tell me what you guys think, because I think Zach was an amazing drummer for them. I think all the drummers they had to be amazing, even though they might have not been the greatest fit after Keith, but I think Zach was the best fit they've had since Keith, and he is an amazing drummer. So I think we'll see more from Zach because he does play with Oasis sometimes, so I think we'll definitely see more from Zach, but I think it's time the guys in The Who are going to be hanging up their backstage passes. And that's sad because I never really got to see the Who that much anyway. So, but tell me what you guys think. Tell me what you think of the Who these days. Tell me what if you saw the Royal Albert Hall fight. Tell me what you guys think about it. Do you think the Who is going to last much longer? So, and for those of you, as always, just stumbling on the channel, check out all the videos. Check them out from first to last. Find your favorite band in there. See what they were up to. It's a good time. Join us here in this family. We've got an amazing community. We're all about rock and roll. All of us groupies from the 80s are gathering here to have chats. We're here, unabashedly, unashamedly, and so not repentant. So join the party, you guys. Get in the comments, hit the subscribe button, hit the share, hit my bells, and we will see you next time on Cocktails and Rocktails. We'll see what else Uniwint is up to. Cheers, big ears.